trade deadline special. It's the special before the special before the special. This is the pre-party, the soft opening, but it is breaking news. And we did say if there was any breaking news involving the Celtics, we were going to jump on here and talk to you about it. We last saw you, what, Bobby, about 9 hours ago, uh, when we were wrapping up a show around 3 a.m. on the Kevin Durant trade, which shook the NBA universe. We will, of course, talk about that. We'll talk about another potential missed opportunity for the Celtics on Jakob Poeltl, but a low-key, kind of exactly the type of move people were expecting Brad Stevens to make, getting something for next to nothing, which is what they did here, acquiring Mike Muscala from the Thunder for Justin Jackson, 2 second-round picks again. That's pretty close to nothing for a serviceable person who you can play here and can help and actually fits, I think, very well, fits what the Celtics do in their style. And it's a good fit into their system. I think would be fairly easy to integrate and helps them in a lot of ways.
For sure. And you look around the league, good reactions to this deal. Many surprised that the Thunder moved on from Mike Muscala, who's on a great contract, $3.5 million this year, a $3.5 million team option next year. Great shooter with size that's valuable in this league. I don't know too much about his defense, but I've always known him to be a strong pick and pop big man who can knock down shots at a 37% rate from three. About 3 a game this year, shooting a little better than that actually this season. So the price was right.
Moving on
from
again.
A player who you didn't need, didn't use. We talked about just moving on from a Jackson and a Vonleh earlier in the year. I'd imagine, I think the second round pick detail is important because the Celtics own 3 second rounders right now until they're like distant seconds. One from either the Pacers or Heat in 2026, one from the Blazers this year. And they actually have a really good one that I would imagine was in this deal and was probably the reason that the Thunder moved on it. It was a 31 and 32 protected Rockets pick this year, which is basically a first rounder because if it's not protected, say it falls to 33, the Celtics would have gotten it. That was from the Desmond Bane trade a couple years ago when they sent Bane to the Grizzlies. So they got a Rockets pick back that was protected 31, 32. Right now, obviously, the Rockets are the worst team in the league, so they're picking 31, so it would actually just be a Mavericks or Heat pick. But if they fall to 33, potentially the Celtics would have landed that. So I don't know for sure if that pick's in this deal, but I would imagine that was the sweetener that got the Thunder to move on it. But we'll see.
Yeah, and I think that this type of move eliminates the possibility of doing some other moves. The Kelly Olynyk as being someone who was rumored here. I think Muscala kind of fits into that role at a much, much cheaper, lower cost option, both in terms of salary and what you would need to give up to get them. And so I think at this point, you're kind of really centering in. And again, it does offer a little bit of backup big insurance, though he's not a banger. That's kind of what you get there. You're talking about a stretch.
See,
What do you
that's where I'll stop on this one. I think the price was right. I think it's a good player. I don't think he's insurance. Like if Rob or Al go down, I don't know if this is a guy
He
you feel
doesn't,
great
but he
about.
is. Let's put it this way. I know Al Horford is giving you a lot more defensively, but Al Horford is kind of far from a big now. This is a large body. Certainly not a classic big. He is a stretch four. But he's 6'11". And again, what did you want? Did you want a banger to just come in there and just mess up your offense? And if you're getting a second unit big, this guy's not out there defending Joel Embiid. This guy is out there to make sure that you have a large enough body down below on defense and then somebody who can get buckets on the offensive end. I don't know what you're looking for necessarily in a backup big if it was more traditional big who can just bang and grab boards. What do you think was the greater need here?
Well, yeah, he fits what they're looking for in terms of being able to put a guy on the floor with Rob, with Al in different
It's kind of
lineups in the
Gallo. I mean,
postseason.
it's poor man's Gallo, right? I mean, in the sense of like you would have been
that's a good way
using
to
them.
put it.
You would have been using them the same way, and you were set with Gallo as your quote unquote big insurance because they would have played in more small ball lineups in there with second units, and that's how you would have used that person.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't hate the move. It just feels like the low cost move, the move that
Of course.
you had a price, you stuck to it. We'll
Yeah.
obviously get to the Poeltl fallout this morning, but similar offer here than what they offered to Poeltl, and you don't lose any players. You keep Gallinari, you keep Pritchard, you keep Grant. So we've talked about adding to the roster without taking away from it. I think that's always Brad Stevens' mantra. This is probably the best they could have done
Yeah.
while maintaining those guys. But of course, we do see the report this morning that they were willing to move on from Gallinari. They were willing to move on from Pritchard in that Poeltl deal.
Yeah.
Just didn't come together.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that too. And again, thank you, Sam, for saying that. Thank you for the donation. We do appreciate that. All super chats do go to hosts, and they are always appreciated. Thank you so much for that. We've enjoyed bringing this content in here. Yes, a little afternoon delight. Why not? This isn't the only show we're going to do. No matter what, we're going to jump on. We were initially going to jump on around 2:00. We may push that a little bit, but we are going to jump on prior to the deadline and kind of take you through everything that's going on. But with this deal going through at this time, we definitely felt compelled to tell you, about it and give our opinions on it. And yeah, Bobby, you're right. Low cost. Do you still want to go out and get, and again, this is being thrown out here, a few people in the chat. Do you still feel the need, in addition, to go get your Noel or your Bamba if you can?
No, I think you're
You
good.
still have a roster spot, right? You haven't filled the Vonleh roster spot. It's still open.
No, yeah, so you can take that to the buyout market.
Yeah.
I'd be
not in a
surprised.
trade. Do you want to see that, or do you want to see a wing here addressed?
I'd take a look at what wings become available buyout wise. I don't think the price is going to be worth pursuing any of the guys that are available. And I do see one of the guys we talked about in terms of wings possibly coming here, Jalen McDaniels, moving, I think, in that Matisse Thybulle trade. Philly getting Jalen McDaniels in that 3-team deal. So he's another wing that's off the board right now. Shvi Mikhailuk going to Charlotte there. Yeah, I like the idea of a McDaniel. Celtics, of course, did use the TPE to complete this Muscala deal. So you lose that now in terms of things you can use to add. So I'll go to the buyout market. See who wants to come among wings.
Well, we did talk about it here. This is a cheaper option. It appears the Celtics did reportedly take a swing at Jakob Poeltl. And Bobby, you and I had this thing pegged pretty much exact. The Celtics are willing to play with, for the most part, unless they're taking a big swing and changing up or rolling up into a larger player where they might consider something like Grant or something like whatever. They were really playing with Pritchard, Gallinari, and second-round picks as really the who wants something for this. And that was the offer to San Antonio reportedly for Poeltl. And they declined. And they went in the direction that they went, and they got a first-round pick out of the deal.
Yeah, and what Celtics fans, I'm sure the team will say, is that it was tough to match that Toronto pick, given that Toronto's out of the playoffs right now and doesn't have a great trajectory moving forward. Still looking to move OG Anunoby. Kind of perplexing that they do this. But could the Celtics have matched this? If you send 2025, and as I talked about, amend that 2028 pick you already owed the Spurs, I think that brings you closer. I don't know if it gets it done, but you're offering Pritchard, who I think is more valuable to the Spurs potentially than a Khem Birch. It would have been close, but obviously the Celtics don't want to send out future first right now. They can offer their first for 24 if they wait until the offseason. It's just, I think you needed that bona fide insurance behind Rob, behind Al. Muscala is a nice piece, gonna help the bench.
I
Help
think
your
he's.
rotations
I
as
don't
a
think he's
whole.
insurance. I think he helps your rotation, but he's not insurance. You're right.
Yeah, Poeltl would have been insurance, and I think that would have been worth a first-round pick. We'll see what else the Celtics do going forward. I obviously don't think you need your future first as much as you do, but Poeltl, I would have loved that idea, and it just seems to me like the Raptors were in there trying to buy low on him, seeing what they can do. They make a little bit more of an aggressive offer than the Celtics. The Celtics really try to buy low by getting him for a couple seconds. I mean, a couple months ago, the Spurs were asking for 2 firsts for Poeltl. And
I
now the
mean,
Celtics are trying to
right,
get him
but
for a couple seconds. And again, you get that great second round pick, but what's up, Nick?
professional studio. There's Nick. That's our guy. That's where
John coming to us from CLNS
we're coming from,
Studios.
the Easty Studios.
Yeah, so I am seeing your guy Wiseman floating around out there. I don't know if that deal is done,
Wiseman
John.
for Bay is
Is
being.
that
It
done?
looks like no. I don't see it as done. But that was the guy I mentioned. Yep, Nick. There is Nick. You got a 3 for today. Boomercast. It's a Boomercast. The president, El Presidente, jumps in here. Thank you for this donation again. Who's we here? We got Macau Bridges. I'm sorry, Brooklyn. You got smoked. But that's okay. You got smoked. So yeah, so this happened. Ton of other things happened. Every name out there is going to be one. It's like, oh man, I wanted that. So
Yeah,
you're
that's
going to
always
see
how
some
it
names
goes.
going out there. Jalen McDaniels, that's a guy you mentioned early, Bobby, in this process. Someone you thought you were interested in.
Well, we obviously see what the choice was between big and wing.
Yep.
You could have given up multiple seconds here. Celtics don't have a ton of seconds, as we've talked about. They traded multiple future ones for Evan Fournier a couple of years ago. They also did. They've done plenty of dumps like Vonleh and stuff like that. So they've given up a lot of second round picks. Now they're probably down to 1 after giving up these from Muscala. I like the idea of a McDaniels free agent to be. A little bit of a risk there.
Totally.
You get more cost control and flexibility with Muscala coming in, and still have the ability to go get a guy. But 24 years old, saw some flashes. Not a great player. See why he's moving for this price. But
no doubt.
I think would have been interesting. The thing is that here's the thing. A depth big's gonna play in the playoffs, given that they're playing double bigs. A depth wing isn't, because they're gonna use Brogdon at wing. They're gonna use White in 3-guard backcourt, stuff like that. So if you go get a wing, it's gonna be someone who has to be okay sitting on the bench if the Celtics are fully healthy. As you've talked about, John, you needed a guy who could still play in the rotation when Horford and Rob start. So you get that here. Wing, I know it's great to have a guy who could spell Tatum. I don't know if that's what McDaniels would have been. And you want to have at least a more reliable option than Hauser if Hauser fades. But we've talked about, John, like that wing spot might be a bigger need, but the big spot is where you could potentially be hurt more. So they're gonna be judged on how that goes in the front court in the playoffs. If Al and Rob stay healthy and Muscala is that perfect complement to them, I think it looks like a great move. But if you passed up going to get a big who could step in and actually fill out those minutes and do it well, and someone gets hurt, all of a sudden you're saying, all right, did they go a little on the cheap side here?
You know me, Bobby. I've been on the wing brigade since the off season. I thought in the off season their biggest need by far was wing depth, and they went out and got a guard in Brogdon, and they got a stretch 4 in Gallinari. So they didn't directly address wing depth, but you thought because of the position those guys play, they might take some of the pressure off of it, depending on the lineups that you would throw out there, where Brogdon could, in effect, in a 3-guard lineup, be your de facto wing, and then Gallinari, also would have some swing, sort of capabilities depending on which lineups he's involved with. But they have not addressed it. Now that Jaylen Brown literally has a broken face, I feel like you've got more issues than you've ever had before.
Yeah, but it's a regular season issue, right? As we've talked about, Brown and Tatum, if either one of them get hurt, you're in big trouble no matter what you have behind them. You don't need a wing necessarily. I think you could use one to help spell Tatum for the right price. I just don't think you give up a ton for it. And again, they were limited in what they could offer here, John. You can say, oh, why didn't the Celtics go get McDaniels for a couple seconds? They only had 3, and they used 2 of them to go get Muscala. So you had a pick there. I'm sure they are forecasting maybe some wings slipping loose in the buyout market, but I think you're
Or
effectively done in terms of
or
trades here.
or you got something else cooking, because again, if you believe what's out there, and I know Keith kind of started rattling this cage, Keith Smith at Celtics blog from, earlier in the week, Grant Williams is out there. Teams are asking about Derek White. Again, the possibility of a large move still exists if you're willing to trade one of your rotation players. If you're not, this is what you're doing: the Muscala deal for something that you can afford to give up, not really mortgaging that first round pick unless you think you're going to get a really quality player and one that's probably under team control for longer than just this year. It's obvious that they didn't include a first round pick for Poeltl. That's something that they don't want to do, but they could do it for the right piece. You also don't know what other teams want to kind of enter tank land and are willing to dump stuff to you in order to kind of clear up some space and just get worse. Also, you have no idea like what the whispers are in terms of buyout market. I mean, some people here are in the chat talking about Gordon Hayward getting traded and bought out. I haven't heard anything to that regard, but imagine like, you don't know what kind of quality player could shake through if they get
Yeah.
if they get tossed out here. So, they obviously have a good idea, what they think might be there, but I can't believe they're done. And I can't believe that the last thing here's the thing. I can't believe they're done in the sense of like, this was our move, I'm shutting down the phone lines. I
Yeah.
believe they still desperately want to continue looking for ways to improve and are willing to do a lot of things that people aren't necessarily considering right now.
Well, I might I'm trying to remember if I have this right, but TP subtract, right? So if you have 5.9 and you subtract 3.5 from it, you have 2.4 left, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then you also have a Gallinari disabled player exception that effectively acts as a
Which is
TP.
like
Or
3.5, right? It's like it's
yeah,
less than the 5. It's less than what he got.
yeah. So
3.2. Tim Shields just said. Yep.
so
Right.
you can use that in the buyout market, or you could use that the rest of today
Yeah.
to go get a guy like Javonte Green who makes 1.8 or a real low cost wing. So that's always possible. But if you're not willing to give up your first for Pearl, which wing are you going to give up your first for? So I don't see anything happening on the trade front there. Nice to use those pieces you have to either acquire a guy into that roster spot outright for maybe one future second, or
I'm looking at Brooklyn.
yeah. But what are you offering?
I don't know. What are you offering?
I don't think you have a ton to offer.
You don't have a ton to
They
offer.
had their couple second round picks and they used them. So unless you're going to use a first round pick on a guy, which would be a real aggressive swing, I don't know if you have not only the minutes to give a guy like a Finney Smith or a Bruce O'Neal, but even the assets to go get him. We talked last night. I'm sure everyone was asleep at 3 a.m.
Not
But
everyone.
the Nets are a tax paying team. So if they bring back Danilo Gallinari on a 2-year deal, they're paying tax on his 2-year deal. Big tax, repeater tax. So there's no real incentive for them to bring back salary from the Celtics here. It'd be great if you had a TP that could fit even a Seth Curry at $8 million, but
Yep.
you don't. You have very limited assets right now. $3.2 million to use in a disabled player exception. So you're shooting low. When you're looking at the salaries right now and guys that you could acquire, look low. I see KJ Martin floating around there. I think his salary is very low, I want to say.
Yep.
Not a great player, but a guy that maybe would be willing to sit on the bench. He wasn't happy sitting on the bench in Houston, though. Remember, he demanded a trade last year.
Yep.
He's
Yep.
at
Yep.
1.7 million. Club option for 1.9 million next year. I think that makes some sense. 22 years old. That's the kind of guy you're talking about, John, right? A young guy with some upside still, really
You want
cheap.
young. I mean, if you can get young cheap with upside and some control, certainly. But we'll see. Anyway, yeah, don't worry. Ibaka was part of that Crowder deal. He's just going to be passed around. And
Probably bought out.
wait, I've been traded, Bobby. This is the thanks we get. This is the thanks we get, Bobby. That's okay. Now I know how Jaylen Brown feels. Now I know how Jaylen Brown feels. Disrespected. I'm disrespected. Anyway, so again, ton of activity. What's really funny is I just I mean, going back to, even a few days ago, this is just an insane trade deadline right here. What I will say, looking at this Muscala thing is, again, if it's very much a Gallinari replacement or redundancy or, kind of, fits into the role there, I think it gives you a good idea that A, they're not counting on him coming back, and B, trading him now seems even more of a possibility because even if he were to come back, you kind of got something in there, right? That can do those things. I am not comparing the two necessarily straight up. Gallinari has been all-star level player in this league, and Muscala has been a role player who does a couple things nicely. But I do wonder if that not alters the thinking, but makes it really easy for him to shake loose for whatever it is that you think might play this year and make you a teeny bit better.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping Gallinari if there's nothing worth it. You have him signed for next year. You let him continue rehabbing, no real rush there, and maybe you bring him back for next season or potentially use that contract in the summer. I don't think there's any need to get rid of him right now. And it's been great having him around the team. I know players like having him, and he's a nice voice to have around the team. He's been around the team a ton. So that's helpful. Again,
What's
any
amazing,
team
Bobby,
taking him on, as I
outside
just
it,
talked about with the Nets, that's a lot of money to take on, especially for teams that are close to the tax or above the salary cap. There's really only one team playing around with cap space that could take Gallinari and easily just let him go, and that was the Spurs. And you tried that.
People are saying in the chat, Zach LaVine is a Nick. I don't think that that's happened yet, but I think that they're talking. What is interesting is you have two teams that have a lot to potentially trade in Chicago and Toronto, and you can't quite decide which way they're going to go. Portland's always another one of those teams, but nothing's happened there. There's still a lot of teams that can make some massive moves and swings and really change the competitive balance of things who've not yet stepped up to the plate, which is what makes it interesting is while the Celtics may be quiet, there could be a crap ton going on here. And wow, thank you so much here. We do appreciate that. It could be a crap ton of trades still to come.
Considerations.
Yeah. Which is why, again, we're going to hop on here too and try to keep up. But holy geez, it's going to be it's already shaping up to be an incredible trade deadline.
Yeah, one of the great ones already. Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant moving. Another star potentially moving on top of that would be probably unprecedented. 3 superstars moving at the deadline.
Yeah, star or not star, again, LaVine is, certainly a high-level player. If he were to move, that would be a really big deal. There's a couple of potential options there for other people who have been talked about. And then Toronto with either OG or Siakam, who I don't really know what Toronto's doing. I don't know why they were buyers in the Poeltl deal and talking about selling off other parts. I'm not really sure the direction there. So yeah, I don't know. But you're right. The more trades that are made, the more teams that are kind of filling their needs, the more possibilities exist for the Celtics, who have not traded what you would think would be their chips and Gallinari and Pritchard and a first if they really find something that they like. Then that's about all they have left. And then there's the grant. Then there's the Grant option again, which we don't know.
Yeah, I've thought from the start. I don't think they're gonna move Grant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's risky. And it's risky to keep him too and lose him for nothing. There's a risk no matter which decision you make.
What if Muscala is the Grant? What if Muscala is actually the Grant replacement?
No, Muscala is not.
I know
Grant.
he's not.
Yeah, nice to see Grant get back on track last night too. They needed that.
Yeah.
I think what I've heard from the start on Grant is that they got close to a deal and there's motivation to keep him. And I'd imagine he wants to stay here. He said as much last night. He's just, as we've talked about, a vice president in the union, in position to make a big deal, a role guy. You only have that one chance to really cash in. So I think they're going to come to a deal with him. Yeah, it's all, like as the chatter said there, it's all a negotiation. I'm sure there was some posturing behind the scenes.
That's what I've always
Grant's
felt.
camp,
but
saying,
I actually think,
yeah.
I actually think they're pretty far apart. in terms of perceived value. And I don't know that that gets bridged. I think when we say Grant wants to stay, it's a conversation. That conversation is, Grant, this is all we're going to pay you. We love you, but we're not meeting in the middle. Like, I don't know that it's a
Well, the
negotiation.
market can
It's
decide it too.
we like you and you like us. If you like us if you like us enough, you got to take what we're offering. We're not really moving far. I don't believe this is they'll figure it out eventually and do what's right by both sides. I believe the Celtics are holding on their line, and Grant is either takes it. They like him at what they're offering, but they don't like him much, much higher than that. So Grant's going to have to cave here, not the Celtics, I believe, in order for this deal to get done.
Well, remember, Gallinari comes in as a guy who could have hypothetically competed with Grant. So if you lose Grant for nothing and you still have Gallinari going into next year and then a mid-level exception to use in the offseason as well, it's not a devastating blow. You'd hate to lose him. You'd hate to lose him for nothing. But if you're not getting much for him and he's a $4 million contract, you're hurt by losing him this year in your championship pursuit, aren't you? Of course, depending on what you get back, but what you're getting back would be a risk,
Of course,
an unknown.
it depends on the return.
Yeah. Like, listen, if Max Strus came in the door, or I don't know, who's a guy who would get fans really excited? Josh Hart, or like just a rock solid starting level guy.
Yeah.
If that came back for Grant, I think everyone's doing backflips. If you get PJ Washington, like a guy who's probably a little worse than Grant with maybe a cheaper contract possibly, or you're hurting yourself right now. So right. I don't see it. I don't like the idea of trading Grant. I like the idea of keeping him, especially for the playoff run. You saw the job he did on Embiid last night. I still think that's his biggest value here. And I don't expect him to trade. I haven't heard one thing about them looking to move Grant. So we'll see what happens.
We will see what happens there. In the meantime, since we've been going here, there's a lot of stuff being discussed, but nothing has gotten all the way home. You're seeing Sadiq Bey, James Wiseman, Detroit, and Golden State discussed. You're seeing Zach LaVine going to the Knicks being discussed. Has not happened yet.
Matt Moore had a piece today too that backed up something I heard that Kevin Love could be bought out. Yep. Obviously, that's off the table now with Muscala coming in, but that would have been a guy who would have been interesting. And then Will Barton seems to be someone who's expected to be bought out. I don't think there'll be interest there from the Celtics, but he is an option. So Eric Gordon as well. Again, a guy like that I think wants to play. I don't think he wants to sit on the bench and take DMPs or 10-minute nights on the Celtics. You got to think about that because they don't have a ton of minutes to give at wing if Tatum and Brown are playing 38, 40 minutes a game.
Well, that's what that the point is they should be around 33, 34, you really want to shave, you want to shave 4 to 5 minutes off each of them. And credit to him for the last 2 games, but Hauser, you really want a Hauser replacement, because I just don't believe that Hauser can sustain.
Barton's interesting in that sense because he's got some ball handling abilities, right? Yeah. I don't love his game. I don't think they do either, so we'll see. But the other name I'd keep an eye on, obviously, is Josh Richardson. Yep. I don't see anyone trading for him today.
Nope.
He helped. I think they liked him, and I'm sure he'd have a willingness to come back. Yep. Especially after playing on the Spurs for a year and a half.
Good question here.
I keep an eye on him. Rather have Pritchard.
You love your homegrown guys.
How's Gordon playing this year? I haven't even heard anything about him. He'll be interesting, right? Because that guy can shoot the lights out. Oh. Phenomenal shooter, and he can put up like 9, 10 threes a game and hit them at a high rate. Only at 34% this year, but shot 41 last year. He's old, pushing 35. So he's a great rental for a team if he
I
ends up on
know,
the
but
buyout
like,
market.
you can never get a
Hey,
read on who he is or what he's doing because he's just been buried on the Rockets for these years. So like, you don't even know if these numbers are real numbers because who the hell else is going to be scoring for them, But you're right. I mean, he's as recently as last season or a couple seasons ago, a 40% three-point shooter for his career. He's 37. So I mean, obviously that's what he does. He's having a down year this year and he is old, but you're talking about what are you looking for? You're looking for guys at that in his range playing 8, 10, 12, 15 minutes a game max, So you're not looking for a lot.
yeah, and there's a case when you talk about shaving Brown and Tatum's minutes that the most straightforward way to do that would be finding a guy who can just put up points on the bench, put up shots, put up points, get your bench competitive, give your bench competitiveness and creation.
Yep.
Off the dribble, even if it's not within the flow of the team's offense. You have to balance those two things, right? You don't want a guy just launching shots off the bench and killing your movement and your offense into those second units.
Right.
So that's a worry when you bring in guys like these. But Gary Washburn on the pregame show last night saying, go get a Terrence Ross. Go get a Richardson, I think would fall into that camp. Will Barton, one of those guys who can just put up a lot of shots off the bench. Eric Gordon falls into that camp.
Yep.
Who can help you win your bench minutes. That doesn't get me too excited. I wouldn't hate a move like that on the buyout market. And there's a case that that's the most straightforward way to spelling Tatum and Brown.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know who exactly is the best fit there.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't want Ross. I don't think I want Gordon. Although I'd listen.
I don't think this moves the needle much. It's a body. It's an extra body, but yeah.
Yeah. And you have to find the right fit because I think more often than not, that guy's going to sit on the bench for most of the game. You still have Hauser, who I think they believe in. You still have Brogdon playing big minutes off the bench. And listen, even after this Muscala deal, don't bury Luke Cornett. He's given you so many good minutes this year.
Someone just asked that in the trade. Someone just asked that in the chat. How is Bobby worried Luke Cornett's going to lose minutes now that Mike Muscala's here?
I don't think he should. You could even play those guys together to help spell Robin Al's minutes.
I love it. Never change. Never change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this team's much bigger now, which is great. Look at all the front court depth they have. You could play a lineup with Cornett, Grant, and Muscala because Muscala and Grant can both shoot threes, and you're defending big wings and big men across the board.
Yep.
So this is I don't want to call it a great move because Muscala is not a great player. He's good.
You're picking
it's a
him
good
up.
move.
He's laying on the curb and you grabbed him for nothing. Is the reality. That's fine. That's a good move. It's better to have him than not have him. When you give up nothing of value, it's a good move. And so it's especially if you can find minutes for that person. Real couple quick programming notes. We're doing that trade deadline special. We're going to start at 2, maybe a shade after. Look for our Twitter. We'll notify you when we go live. Should there be any other moves between now and then, we'll try to jump on if we can. But we are going to wrap this portion of the show. But make sure you guys tune in and just be ready, be waiting. Jump in there, jump into that show right now and chat with each other until we get there. We'll be there in about an hour, jumping back in to take you all the way up through the trade deadline, see what else the Celtics do, see if there's any other major seismic moves throughout the NBA that will, kind of shake up the world and the competitive balance of things. While we have you guys, why don't I tell you a little something about one of our sponsors as well, HelloFresh. Check that out, America's #1 meal kit. If you're interested in a really good deal, you want to have farm fresh vegetables, restaurant style recipes delivered right to your doorstep. No hassle, no grocery stores, nothing. Really easy, pre-proportioned. Just read the menu card, cook great gourmet meals for 65% off the entire purchase when you go to hellofresh.com/garden65. Use the code garden65, 65% off plus free shipping. Pretty good deal. You'll also get a phenomenal t-shirt anytime you subscribe to one of our sponsors. Again, join us for the trade deadline special coming up in about an hour, a little less than an hour, with Bobby Manning and I and anyone else who thinks that they want to jump on and talk to us about what's going on. We expect to see all of you back here as well. Tell your friends. It should be a fun time chatting. Did the Celtics do enough? Did they do too much? Who else improved? We'll break all that down when we rejoin you guys in a little bit. Thank you to Amit. And thank you to Tim, producers, who've I don't think a single one of us has slept with that KD trade going down last night. We didn't talk about it in this stream, but we will, of course, talk about it and the implications to the Celtics' chances in the East, which the path just got a little bit easier, and just what it means for the rest of the NBA. And what else happens now. So we'll talk about that as well. Until then, we will see you guys later. Thanks for joining here in the middle of the afternoon, little afternoon delight garden report special. Bobby Manning, I'm John Zannis. We'll